Coming up on No Pulp, it was a consequential week of college basketball. We had number 1 versus number 2 and a whole lot more.
It was a great weekend. I'm taking on a rookie in the juicer. Might be some Swiss cheese out of Andrew Della, Piana in a little bit. Plus, Austin and I are building out a big 3, something I know AB has wanted to do for a while.
And we will be reacting to the top 16 reveal, the first bracket reveal, the top 4 seeds in all the regions, and some pretty cool final words and plays of the week. It's a 45-minute episode of No Pulp. It starts right now.
Kansas State has been on fire this year.
Missouri is one of the most fraudulent teams in college basketball.
And it was proved to
They're not going to fire him. He's the best player in program history.
Side to Lawrence for the win. Yes, he got it.
She is the Shohei Ohtani of college softball. This is a team that's potentially going to be a top 10 team in the country.
How you feeling? I'm excited to win the juicer.
LSU has captured its very first national championship.
No Pulp time, ladies and gentlemen, and what a week to recap some sports. Jordan, Austin, and Jordan. It's a 45-minute show. That's a doozy, but you spent, what, like 16 hours on flights this last week? Good to be back?
Yes, it's good to finally be back in snowy Syracuse. The weather's not as good as the West Coast, like I'll talk about a little bit later, but you know, those flights, it gives you a lot of time to think and prepare for a great week of college basketball.
Yeah, I'll tell you where there is no snow. Alabama. Auburn, number 1 Auburn, went to number 2 Alabama, the first of 2 meetings this season, and they went into Tuscaloosa and made a statement win, 94-85, the final score. Jordan, the Tigers flex their muscles in this one.
I mean, this game had everything, Austin. It started out with Auburn just getting on fire to start the game, really silencing that crowd. And that second half overall was absolutely nuts. The back and forth scoring affair. I'm all for defense. I love defensive games. Little slugfest. This was not one of them, but it was fun to watch both teams really get hot on the offensive side.
Bruce Pearl, he talked about how all the eyes in the country were on Alabama, the state of Alabama in this one.
All eyes of college basketball were on the state of Alabama and the SEC. What this conference has done in men's basketball is historic.
Well, he's right. This is just the 6th time ever that there's been a 1-2 matchup in the same state. First time, obviously, in Alabama. The SEC on full display here. But really, the way that Auburn was able to build the lead, sustain the comeback, and then respond again was amazing. They are pretty much the top team in the country right now in most people's eyes. It's tough to really nitpick what they've done so far this season after a win like this.
Undoubtable. I mean, one of their losses is at Duke and then home to Florida. Those are 2 really good teams. Auburn's been doing it all season long. You go back to their non-conference schedule, they absolutely dominated, played probably the hardest non-conference schedule in the entire country, and it's because of Johni Broome. I mean, anytime Alabama had a run, Johni Broome hit a shot to stop it, to stymie it. 19 points, 14 boards, 6 assists. Auburn has just been on fire, and the depth of scoring that they have, Austin, is nuts.
They have so many dudes. When the game was tied at 65-65, Pettiford hit a step-down 3-pointer from the right wing, and then with 68-68, Chad Baker-Mazara, who's been so key for them all year long, also hit a right wing 3. This team plays with so much confidence. They washed away that home loss to Florida 1 week earlier. They're playing with the swagger of a team that has the bullseye on their back and does not care.
Got to give credit to Alabama, too, though. Mark Sears didn't have his best game, only 2 of 11 from three-point land. When they play at the end of the season, if Sears can get hot from deep, that is going to be interesting to watch, and that game could have SEC standings implications at the end of it. This SEC tournament, Austin and Nashville, is going to be absolutely insane. I mean, look at that. Number 1, 4, 2, 7, 15, 6. I mean, it's not just battling to get into the NCAA tournament, it's battling for that number 1 line.
I mean, Tennessee is a top 10 team in the country, and they're 6th in the SEC standings. They got swept by Kentucky this year. And Kentucky's been missing some pieces, especially at their point guard position with Lamont Butler. It's a slugfest no matter how you slice it, this will be a really fascinating end of the regular season in the SEC.
One of the best games in the country so far this year on the men's side. And then how about the women's side? Number 1 UCLA going down for the first time this season.
Yeah.
A battle of Hollywood. UCLA loses to USC 71-60 at USC. And, UCLA has looked unbeatable all season long. But Juju Watkins, my God.
She was so good. The stats for her read as follows: 38 points, 11 rebounds, 8 blocks, and 5 assists. I watched her highlight package. Unbelievable. Remember, she was so good last year as a freshman. Arguably the best player in college basketball last year, even with Caitlin Clark. Arguably. And she's back and better than ever. When she blocked Lauren Betts, not once but twice, the crowd erupted. The crowd for this game was tremendous. She was poised throughout. USC built the lead, and then kind of like Alabama against Auburn, UCLA came back. They were leading in the second half, and Watkins said, "Not on my watch." She pushed in transition. She made her shots. She played within herself. Unbelievable effort out of Juju Watkins.
This makes me so excited for the NCAA tournament for the women's side, too. I mean, Juju Watkins, 25 points in the first half, pretty much carrying USC, 38 points. Reminded me of Trae Young back in the day with Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And then how about Lauren Betts, too? I mean, she gets it done every single time, but UCLA, what really plagued them was the turnovers. 20 turnovers led to 21 USC points. No matter if you're the number 1 team in the country, undefeated on the season, if you turn the ball over on the road that much, it's going to come back to bite you.
I think it's a good thing that they have a loss now. Remember, these two teams will play again in a few weeks back at UCLA, Pauley Pavilion, so they could get the rematch victory there. But to tie a bow on Watkins, it was the first time in over 20 years in women's college basketball history, the D1 level, the player recorded 35 points, 5 assists, and 5 blocks. In the men's game, that hasn't happened since Brandon Clark before he was at Gonzaga, when he was at San Jose State in a game at Air Force. Just unreal stuff out of Juju Watkins. Staying out West Coast, though, right now, flip back to the men's side. Arizona hosted Houston. Houston's been on a tear this season, just one hiccup in an overtime loss to Texas Tech, a game that was crazy. And Houston goes on the road and wins 62-58. Kelvin Sampson and his boys came back in Tucson and delivered a gut punch to the Wildcats.
This was a great game, Austin. When you look at it, it's a classic Houston team. They
Yeah.
play defense. They're top 5 in KenPom and defensive efficiency. They have a bunch of scores that they can go to pretty much throughout the entire game. Roberts didn't even have a good game down low, and they still found a way to get the victory. When you look at Arizona, Caleb Love, he's a great player. It's still crazy that he's still in college basketball, but he's really their go-to guy, and I think that makes Arizona a little bit one-dimensional on the offensive end, where it's enough for Houston to get that victory on the road.
Love is so hit or miss every game, and you said it with Houston. Their defense gives them a high floor. Unfortunately for Houston fans out there, this game does not change my opinion on them overall. I still view them as a very tough out in the NCAA tournament. That cliche actually does apply to them. It's so tough to beat them. But I still don't view them as a national title contender because they don't have that go-to score. LJ Crier's good, not great. They got other guards who are good, not great, and Juwan Roberts. He's a good college player, but he should not be the go-to scorer. You mentioned he had a quiet game in this one. Yeah, Uzan, he's had some nice moments this year. He's a nice player, but they don't have enough consistent offense to get over the hump against the good teams. Really strong win here. They've been great in the Big 12, but I don't see them being a national title contender.
I agree with you. It's kind of a carbon copy Houston team that went against Rutgers a couple of years ago in the NCAA tournament.
Sure.
They play great defense, they rebound, and that's going to keep them in every game, whether it's high scoring or low scoring, but they don't have that go-to guy down the stretch where they need to go to him to win the game. They get it down on the road, and by the way, Arizona, bad coaching down the stretch. They're down 3, 30 seconds left. They could have played the foul game to try to extend it at home. They play the possession out, take a bad 3, and it was pretty much done from there for Arizona.
Arizona, I will say, if they can go to Ames or Lawrence, Kansas coming up and win there, I will give them a lot more credit. I don't think they will win those games, but if they do, I'll bump them up.
That was a game out west. Let's come back on the East Coast, back to women's basketball. Supposed to be a great matchup in South Carolina, but how about UConn absolutely thrashing South Carolina 87-58? Austin, we were looking at this game. It was going to be a great back and forth affair. UConn on the road, Paige Beckers, and they just absolutely steamrolled Dawn Staley and company.
Right. I was shocked by this result. I feel like I expected this game to be easily won by South Carolina, and it was quite the opposite. It's like the big brother finally reminding the younger brother who's in charge here. Remember, UConn used to run the show. Recently, South Carolina has run the show. They've gotten the better of UConn in recent matchups. And even this season, UConn has stumbled in some of these bigger games. You think about losing to Notre Dame, losing to USC. They just recently lost on the road at Tennessee, who's now ranked 15th in the country. And they just came in and beat them so well. The defense was elite, held them just 9 points in the second quarter. But the player of the day was AZ Fudd. Holly Rowe, in her post-game interview, said that that was the best game she's ever seen her play. Back-to-back games of 28-plus points. She was filling it up. Great second half. 23 points for Fudd in that half. She led the Huskies to the win.
I mean, you mentioned the second half. How about the third quarter? 18 points in the third quarter. 18 of UConn's 25 points in that frame. It was AZ Fudd, Paige Beckers being that true point guard, 12 points, 10 assists, 7 boards, and the defense for UConn was just absolutely astronomical. I think this is a great game for UConn. You know, they're hovering around number 7. They haven't been as dominant as they have been in recent history in the last couple of years. This was a game in South Carolina, in their building, and they come and just absolutely stomp them away.
It was a shell-shock. It was a stunning look. Dawn Staley looked completely shocked by the result of this game. She didn't want to look at Gino at some points. It was like, what happened? It's like stealing the lunch money. It's like, it's a gut punch. But also, South Carolina, kind of like what I mentioned earlier with UCLA, they almost needed to have a reminder like this, because for a while I thought, hey, South Carolina versus UCLA, that could be the clash, because they had a previous matchup this year. That could be the clash for the championship. But now with USC and UConn emerging as these serious threats, stuff could get interesting.
Well, that ended the 71-game home winning streak for South Carolina.
We should have mentioned that.
Which, by the way, South Carolina, I think, looks beatable this year. Obviously, this game proves this as a fact. But even before this game, I think you look at UConn, you look at UCLA, USC, and we can't forget about the new #1 team, Notre Dame. I mean, they are absolutely on fire. You got Hannah Hidalgo, Olivia Miles. Everyone on the floor that touches the floor for Notre Dame can shoot a 3. They play great defense. It's going to be a fun NCAA tournament for the women's side.
Has scored like 20-plus in like 12, 13 straight games. It's nuts. First home loss for South Carolina since December 3rd of 2020 when we were seniors in high school. All right, we're bringing on another youngin in just a little bit. Andrew Della Piana, for the first time, is in the juicer, taking on Jordan. You don't want to miss it.
Jason, let's go see your room.
What do you think? We kept it a little spare, so you can decorate it how you like.
Dinner! Go?
Excellent. Soccer is fun. Yeah, I saw you guys out there. We're the I thought you were on my team.
No Pulp rolling on here in the CitrusTV studios. It's Juicer time. I'll be your host, Austin Baird. We've got Jordan Leonard. And for the first time, Andrew Della Piana.
Hello there.
Do you know how this works?
Pretty sure, yeah.
Might need to give him a lesson. He's a youngin'.
You nervous, bro?
No.
Definitely nervous.
So we're going to have some statements, some questions about the landscape of college sports. We got women's and men's lacrosse. We got women's and men's college basketball. So we'll be testing each of your guys' knowledge. You got 1 point for the first, 2 points second, 3 points for the third, and maybe a bonus question as well. Jordan, we'll start with you. The whole landscape of college lacrosse, men's and women's last week. Who had the best individual performance?
You know, Austin, I spent a lot of time researching this. I went on Inside Lacrosse, go to the men's, the women's side, really dove deep to see who really impacted their team, and it was Ashley Humphrey of North Carolina. You know how many points she scored, Andrew?
Oh, I did my research too.
Yeah.
9. Yeah,
Nine points.
Yeah.
9.
Oh my God.
3 goals, 6 assists, 9 points. And just on top of that, by the way, she contributed those 9 points. 9 of UNC's 14 total goals. Florida, the opponent in the matchup, scored 9 times. She almost outscored Florida herself. That's just getting it done. It's not about just scoring in college lacrosse. It's about impacting the game. If you're assisting, you're scoring, you're really helping your team win. And that was a top 10 Florida squad, a team that made the Final Four last year, Andrew. That's a great performance right there from Ashley Humphrey.
Yeah, individual performance, so not relying on other players. So her sister...
She individually carried her team.
Okay, so her sister, who's, you know, the #1 recruit in the country last year, she didn't score 5 goals, right?
She's young. Ashley Humphrey's a veteran.
Chloe Humphrey's got 15 goals in 3 games. That's like if Aaron Rodgers was throwing screen passes to Devontae Adams.
We won't be seeing that much more.
That offense was competent this year. They couldn't even do that. So, but yeah, there's other players on the offense.
What's your answer then?
I'm going to go with Syracuse's own Emma Ward. I know it's a little bit of a bias pick, right? But when you go down to Maryland, you show up and you show out against the Terps. How can I not give you any recognition? In the first 5 minutes of this game, Emma Ward had 5 points. Look at the defender that's on her. Kennedy Major, preseason All-American defender, and she tossed her around like a rag doll. Look at that behind-the-back goal. To give Syracuse a chance in this one, she had 1 goal against Maryland last season. She set the tone early to finally get Syracuse over that hump against the Terps, and that's exactly what 44 do. You give her the ball when she's that good.
I mean,
so initially, I want to go with Jordan here.
He's hating on points and then uses the 4 assists and Emma Awards. That's
the amount of
such
research,
hypocrisy right there.
The amount of research that Andrew did. I got to give Andrew Della.
I like that.
First point
That's good.
Of this
That's a smart man. That's a smart man.
This was some great stuff out of Andrew. Let's go from the lax field to the basketball court. We're talking about a team in women's basketball who had a real letdown spot this week. Jordan, I go back to you first.
Austin, this is an easy answer. We talked about it in the first segment of the show. South Carolina is the biggest letdown of the week, Andrew. Did you watch the game? South Carolina at home against UConn, a 70-plus game winning streak at home, and they got the doors blown off of them. It wasn't close from the absolute start. South Carolina played so bad. UConn beat them 87-58. AZ Fudd scored 28 points. And South Carolina, they got beat. The worst top 5 loss for a team since 2009. That's nuts. The expectations were so high for South Carolina, and they came up flat.
Did you forget UConn has won like 11 national championships? Like, that's what Gino Auriemma does in big games.
It's on the road.
He wins. He wins. I don't care who it's against. He wins. That's exactly what he does. Okay, sorry. I get so passionate about this stuff. But for me, it's got to be the Kentucky Wildcats, right? They started off the week as the number 8 team in the country and got throttled by Ole Miss, a team that's middle of the pack in the SEC. You can't do that. The Wildcats in this game had 33 rebounds total. The Rebels had 27 offensive rebounds. Not going to win you a lot of games here, head coach Kenny Brooks. He said it's one of the softest performances he's ever seen. And that's a guy that's won a lot of games at Virginia Tech. And as well, Kentucky led for more than 27 minutes in this game, and they still lost to a mediocre SEC team in Ole Miss.
That's a road game.
That won't even sniff the tournament.
It's a road game in the SEC.
They won't even sniff the tournament.
It's a road game in the SEC.
At least they did finish with a big win over Georgia.
They
and
did.
With that said, none of that matters because what South Carolina did on Sunday was embarrassing. Jordan gets the 2 points and is up 2-1 as we enter the third. And I guess this means final question given how the math works out. So we'll go to Andrew for the first response here. Which men's basketball team on the bubble maybe really screwed themselves over in terms of making March Madness with their results?
I mean, we've talked plenty of SEC. And I hate to break it, but it's going to have to be Boomer Doomer for the Oklahoma Sooners. They lost by 3 points to a 1-10 LSU team. That is flat out unacceptable. And especially for the fact for a team that led by 15 points with 14 and a half minutes to go in this game, they are so screwed because their next 5 games, you go to Florida, you host Mississippi State and Kentucky, then you go on the road against Ole Miss, you come back home against Missouri, and then you have to face your arch rival from Texas, who hasn't been great this year, but you're not going to beat Texas and Austin because that's just not what they do.
I hate to break it to you, Andrew. You just listed all the games that they have left to make up for that loss for Oklahoma.
But they won't, so they're not favored.
So many quad one games for Oklahoma, and because of the loss this weekend and the recent schedule that they have coming up, SMU knocked themselves out of tournament contention. And you want to know why, Andrew? They lost to a team that was right there with them, Wake Forest at home. SMU still does not have a quad one win all season long. Wake Forest is right there with them in the first 4 out, and they lose to them at home. That makes them 5-2 in quad 2, and then you look at the rest of the way for SMU. The ACC is horrendous this year. They don't have a chance to make up for this bad loss
so they don't play Clemson on Saturday. They don't play Clemson on Saturday?
Yes, they play Clemson on Saturday, but they lost head-to-head to Wake Forest, who was right there with them at home. That knocks them behind Wake Forest and out of the first 4 out, probably the next 4 out too.
This offense is dangerous. It's top 25. They have 6 double-digit scores.
They still have no quad one win all season long.
They have 19 wins. This is tough. The thing with me here is that Oklahoma was trending down. SMU was trending up. So this was a gut blow, a gut punch for the SMU Mustangs.
Oh.
Wake Forest collapsed against Florida State at home earlier this week, and then Wake goes to SMU and wins there. SMU and Jordan get the win in this one. Andrew, a pretty strong effort out of you, but Jordan is now thrust into the standings of the Juicer tournament. You see that? Him and his buddy Carson Fowler at the top. I think they subtracted 2 of my points, but we'll take that. We're in the field for now. Andrew, you're below the cut line right now. This might be all she wrote for you.
This cut line, that's tough.
That was good, though. Yeah. Your energy was great. Boomer Doomer was a really good line.
Thanks, guys. I like the pity wins. Thanks.
All right. Well, you get to watch the rest of the show. When we return, we're talking about building out a roster, building out coaches, point guards, big guys. Jordan Leonard. We're breaking it down after this.
They call me Maxie, but I prefer tripod. I was your above-average 4-legged homie, and then wham, bam, minivan. Some people pity me. Now that's lame. I still run, fetch, and swim. And the ladies love me. I'm the ultimate wingman. Just don't ask me to high five.
Welcome everyone back into No Pulp. He's Austin. I'm Jordan. Big win in the juicer for me right there, Austin. I appreciate that. And a big loss for, by the way, unmentioned ACC now potentially three bids, not maybe even a fourth. It's going to be interesting stuff to watch. How's that spreadsheet going, by the way?
It's going to start on Selection Sunday, less than 4 weeks away, March 16th. Until then, I'm not touching it.
Until then, Austin's going to pick some big three. Austin loves creating rosters. He loves basketball. Just look at his smile right here. He loves college basketball. Austin, we're going to start with your big three, your point guard.
Yeah.
Who's it?
You know, there's a lot of really good point guards out there. Walter Clayton Jr. is worth a mention right there. But Ryan Nembhard is the pick in terms of just pure point guard skills. He's so in control. And he's got 10 assists. Look at this guy, 10 assists per game. That leads the country by over an assist per game over Braden Smith of Purdue. Look, he spent his first 2 years at Creighton. Great program, averaged about 4 or 5 assists per game there. Then he goes to Spokane, and under Mark Few, where he always has great point guards, he gets even better. 6.9 assists per game last year, 7th in the nation, and he boosts that all the way up to 10. Only a few players in history have had 11 points, 10 assists, and an over steal per game. Him and Ja Morant, the only two since 1990. Pretty good stuff.
That's a great stat about Ja Morant. You know, Ryan Nembhard, one of the better players in the country. How about Braden Smith of Purdue, though, as my point guard? He's got the beard, too. I just trimmed it a little bit earlier today. Otherwise, I could be pretty comparable to Braden Smith. But you mentioned the assists, Austin, with Nembhard. How about Braden Smith, too? 16 points per game, 8.8 assists per game. That's second in the country behind Nembhard. And also, by the way, shoots the three ball 39% for Purdue. That's absolutely nuts. Gets it done all over the court. And this is where, you know, when you're picking a point guard, I want to see what his intangibles are. He's very savvy, very tough. His assists, he's really setting up his players with his high basketball IQ. He's a veteran. He never makes a bad play anymore.
A lot to like about Braden Smith. A lot to like, but he did get outplayed at home to some Wisconsin guards the other day.
Wisconsin, good team, though.
They are. They really are. All right, Jordan, we're going to this 2-3 spot. It's a weird position in college basketball, but who do you have here? A lot of names to choose from.
Yeah, as you know, I was going back and forth with this, a 2-3 guard, and I've got to settle in Texas with Trey Johnson. He's one of the best players, if not one of the best freshmen in the country. It's tough with Cooper Flagg, Ace Bailey, Dylan Harper, you know. He's a freshman, though, and he leads the SEC in points per game. That's nuts. We've been talking about all show. The SEC, by large, the best conference in college basketball this season, and he leads them in points per game. He's undershadowed by Cooper Flagg, Dylan Harper, and Ace Bailey, like I said. Great size for the two-guard spot, too. 6'6", 6'10" wingspan. He's got the 20 points per game I mentioned, 37% from three-point range, and also just under 2 turnovers per game. He protects the ball even as a freshman. That's really what I'm looking for in that two-guard spot.
He plays well beyond his years. I've been really impressed with Trey Johnson. When he had that comeback against A&M a few weeks ago, he was great in that matchup. For me, I got Curtis Jones of Iowa State. Some people might be like, who? Who is this? But look, Iowa State's been a great story, and so is Curtis Jones. He comes off the bench, actually, in most games, and yet he was still on the mid to late season top 20 candidates for the Wooden Award. That's how special he is. 17.5 points per game, nearly 5 rebounds per game, almost 2.5 assists per game, over a steal per game. He shoots the ball really well, 84% shooter from the foul line, 37% from beyond the arc. The only Power 5 player with those averages in the country. He's consistent 20-plus points, or 14-plus in 20 of his 25. In a bit of a slow stretch right now, but he's instrumental to what the Cyclones are, and the Cyclones have been a good story this season.
If anyone doesn't know Austin, this is a classic Austin pick. He goes to Iowa State, a guy who's probably not talked about that much in the country with his two-guard. Austin, moving over to the big man, this is where down low you got to get the job done. Who you got?
Well, from Curtis Jones, a guy who not many people know, to a guy that everybody should know, Johni Broome, right? The big guy for Auburn. It's basically him and Cooper Flagg. And now, look, Cooper Flagg, he doesn't really fit the necessary specific positions because of how good he is. But Broome, to be comparable, to be 1 and 2 in the Wooden Award race with not a generational talent like Cooper Flagg, but a guy who comes around every 5 to 10 years like Flagg, for Broome to be with him speaks to how good he's been. He missed just 2 games with an ankle injury, and he's picked up right where he's left off. I mean, the other day against Alabama, he had like 19 points, 14 rebounds. He's got such a nice fadeaway move. Good touch around the rim. He can shoot the 3 ball pretty nicely as well. High release point. Johni Broome does it all for the Auburn Tigers.
You know, Austin, I got to agree with you. Johni Broome, great player. He gets it done when you need it to, too. When Alabama was going on a run, he stops it in his tracks with that little floater that he's got in the lane.
The dagger shot.
For the big man, though, for me, I'm going to go with a little bit taller guy in Creighton, Big East. How about Ryan Kalkbrenner? I'm going to go with him, too. I've seen him in person. He's a tall guy. You can't see it from the picture right here. Yeah. He's 7'1". He blocks shots. He gets it done down low on offense. On defense, he's got 19 points per game, 8.5 rebounds per game, 3 blocks per game. Still shoots the ball, three-point ball 42%. That's nuts for a guy that's over 7 foot. And like I said, I saw him at the NIL Festival in Vegas. This man is even taller in person. Let's look at what his stats look like compared to Johni Broome. Johni Broome, one of the best players in the country, could win the Wooden Award, and Ryan Kalkbrenner is right there with him, Austin.
He is. Kalkbrenner could be a 4-time Big East Defensive Player of the Year. He's won it the previous 3 years. When he went down with foot injury against St. John's yesterday, everybody was shook. And then when he returned, John Fanta compared it to the Willis Reed moment for the New York Knicks. I mean, maybe some hyperbole from our guy, John Fanta, but Kalkbrenner is certainly instrumental to that defense for the Blue Jays. Jordan, let's round it out here with our head coaches. I know you're dipping your toe back in SEC country.
I am, and it's really going back to last season, the NCAA tournament this year. How about my guy, Nate Oates? He's just a great human being. I mean, look at that smile. He's just so nice. He comes from a background. He coached at Buffalo. He was found out by Bobby Hurley, not the one that's a little bit rude to the media and thinks he's the best coach in the country, the nice Hurley. And he wins games. He wants his players to play fast. His 3 mantras are max effort, continuous growth, and selfless love. I mean, you love that as a coach, encouraging his players and getting it done. They were number 2 in the country before that loss to Auburn.
Good stuff. Curtis Jones, former Buffalo player, by the way. For mine, no surprise if you've been following the program, it's Slick Rick. Rick Pitino. There he is. Look, he might not have the same words of encouragement for his players as Nate Oates does. Pitino kind of likes to go at his guys, but the results speak for themselves. The winningest active D1 coach, been to 7 Final Fours, and the year 1 to year 2 improvements that he's had at every stop are so real. You look at what he did at Boston University, Providence back in the day, Kentucky, Louisville, Iona, and now St. John's. The Johnnies have their best 25-game start since the 1986 season. Their guys play poised. They full court press all the time. They stay spaced on offense. They rebound. They box out. They do everything well, and it's because of that man.
I will say, too, they talk about it when the Dodgers are good, the Yankees are good, baseball's better. When St. John's is good at basketball, the Garden is lit in Big East play. College basketball is so much better. We both got some good teams. I will say, though, I think I got you beat at the guard spot.
You might.
And maybe the center and the head coach competition, just because Slick Rick's got all that experience, like you mentioned.
And there's so many names you could have had. I mean, Cooper Flagg could just be player right here in the middle.
He could play both of these positions. He's a point forward. I mean, what he's done over the last couple of weeks of the season that has just been astronomical for Duke. He's been the best Duke freshman since I can even remember, and that's including R.J. Barrett and Zion Williamson, which is absolutely nuts. You talked about Slick Rick. They were in the top 16 of the NCAA tournament that was just released the other day. Austin and I are going to take a deeper look into that after a quick break. You won't want to miss it.
Welcome to my house. Lately, not my happy place. Everybody's pretty tired of each other. The parents were not themselves. My little brothers were morphing into small creatures. The walls were closing in. Clearly, a case of too much family, too close, 24/7. And there's a lot of that going around right now. If this sounds like your house, try going someplace new. YourLifeYourVoice.org. You'll find lots of ideas to help you handle the family stresses of being confined to close quarters. YourLifeYourVoice.org. It might not get you out of the house, but it could help you find a little more breathing room.
Hey Bobo, do trees tell each other stories?
I'm sorry, I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, why don't we go find out? Listen.
Can birds draw pictures?
I don't have an answer for that.
Dad, do stars visit their friends?
Look!
Let's talk more college basketball. Austin Barach, Jordan Leonard here. Jordan, the 16-team reveal before the slate of games on Saturday. People made a big deal out of this. Oh, where's my team? Where's your team? Where's this team? What are the matchups? The hypothetical matchups. Let's take a look at some of these potential matchups here. First of all, I mean, the SEC team's getting 3 of the 4
That
one
just shows
seeds.
how dominant the conference has been.
That's been expected. That's what it's been basically all the projections all season long. But some of these matchups are really intriguing. Texas Tech could really get after Auburn, and Michigan and Florida as a 1-4 could also be very intriguing.
How about Dusty May, too? Michigan playing really well. The Big Ten also underrated on this list. They got Wisconsin, Michigan, Purdue's on there, too. And then also the Big 12. Arizona, I think, is a little bit too high, which we might get to in a second or two. We talked about the Houston game earlier in the show. But Auburn, obviously the #1 overall seed, has been the most dominant team in the country all season long. Alabama is also up there as well. And I think Duke, being right here on the 1 line, is huge for the ACC and Duke overall. They have been dominant, especially in conference play. Cooper Flagg is unstoppable.
Duke playing for a 1 seed to play in, I believe, North Carolina for their first 2 rounds. Should they advance?
Yeah.
I think they're going to be playing in New Jersey.
They will.
A 1-4 game with St. John's would be.
You mentioned that St. John's has been so good this season that they've right now earned themselves a spot in the East region, which their first 2 games being in Rhode Island, and then you mentioned it in New Jersey potentially if they can win the first 2 games. What an atmosphere that would be for a Duke St. John's at the Prudential Center. Great arena, by the way. Feed families right there. You know, we've broken down pretty much everything there is to know about the 16 teams, Austin, but I want to know, what team on here do you think is either too high or too low?
Yeah, I don't like doing this, but the team that was like, hey, you should not be here to me. Kansas, the Jayhawks, getting the 4 line. This is just a pick based off of the history of the program, and it's a compliment to the program of KU. They have been a 4-seed or better basically every year since we can remember, Jordan. Actually, it's been since the year 2000. They've been a 4-seed or better every year since 2000. The 1 year not was when COVID happened, and I think they were the best team in the country. But they are not a good 4-seed this year. They've lost 3 straight road games. They're 8-6 in the Big 12. They're ranked like 190th in offensive efficiency when they are on the road. They don't have a go-to player. This is a pick based on pedigree, not this season.
I do agree with that. I think the 4 lines are the most interesting parts of this. You look at Texas Tech, Michigan's there. You mentioned Kansas. How about St. John's, though? I think they are a little bit too low right now. They're top 10 in the country, and they just get it done. Maybe not the net ranking might not do St. John's justice at this moment of time, but when you look at the eye test, this team can score. They can play defense. #2 in KenPom defensive efficiency. Defense wins championships. They beat UConn on the road, even though UConn's not as good as they have been in the last couple of years. They beat Marquette. They got great balance with R.J. Lewis Jr., Zuby Ejiofor, and Kadari Richmond is a shut-down defender. If you have a guard like Kadari Richmond that can score and shut down the other team's best players, especially in the NCAA tournament, that is huge.
And Davon Smith as well, off the bench, a feisty guard. He can get after it on defense
and the experience, like we talked about in the last segment with Rick Pitino. Get to the tournament. He knows how to coach and really get his players going.
We are totally aligned on St. John's. Move them up, committee. Come on. Use the eye test like Dickie V would tell us to do. All right. We've got one more break, and when we return, we're talking final words, plays of the week, awesome stuff on the other side of this break on No Pulp.
Here we go. We're going to go out there in the rain. You're going to get wet. All right, here we go. Go, okay, quick. Oh, yeah. Yes. So much fun. Mwah. We're getting so wet. Oh,
Your daughter just had her first breakup. Do you A, put yourself in her shoes? B, console her?
Don't worry, sweetie. This is gonna happen a lot.
Or C, find her a new boyfriend?
Nice single boys. That was weird.
As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just.
We are in the home stretch of no Pulp here. What a ride it has been so far. Jordan Leonard, Austin Barach. Jordan, it's been a blast, but it's time for our plays of the week, and I hear for you, you're dipping back into the lacrosse world.
Yeah, as much as I love basketball, that's your jam. Lacrosse is my jam at this point. You see the play already in the background here. How about Dartmouth? Ivy League lacrosse, a long pole. Griffin O'Neill launches it from beyond the restraining line, and the camera misses it. It goes in the net. That's nuts. Griffin O'Neill, full field goal. That is crazy. He launches it as they're trying to do a 10-man ride. The fact that he got that in, and the net is not that wide, Austin.
No.
The fact that he got that in, long pole as well. He's not typically shooting on net. That is absolutely ridiculous from Ivy League lacrosse.
50-plus yards out. Incredible stuff there in Dartmouth, New Hampshire. Great stuff. For my play of the week, I got to go back to the basketball court. My love. Big game in the Missouri Valley. Seriously, first place was not necessarily on the line, but first place standings down the line were, in fact, on the line between rather Drake and the other team that they were playing, which is Bradley. And I got to tell you, I almost messed that one up there, but you can't mess up the dunk that's about to happen from Demarion Birch. Ooh. Get out of the way. He's a sophomore guard from Milwaukee with more vengeance than Giannis Antetokounmpo. Boom! He doesn't play that much, but he is increasing his field goal percentage tremendously. The Bradley Braves are 21-6, 12-4 in the MVC. I won't forget about them anymore. Look at that. Birch and the Bradley Braves just one game back of Drake now in the MVC standings.
Oh, so that was nuts. I hope he's a lefty, because if he dunked that with his offhand too, that is absolutely crazy. For my final word, I'm going to go back to basketball, some conference realignment stuff that I experienced this past week, and it was the full extent of conference realignment. I went out to the West Coast to call both Syracuse women's basketball games at Stanford and Cal over the latter part of the week and the weekend, and I can tell you I am now more anti-conference realignment than ever. While prepping for these games, I learned that Stanford and Cal has had to endure this season, and it was just cruel. Cal is set to travel 21,000 miles in ACC play alone. They traveled 13,000 miles all of last year, but that's not all. These schedules these teams face are horrific. Every other week, Cal and Stanford head out to the East Coast. They leave on a Tuesday to adjust to the time change, play on a Thursday, move to the next city, play on a Sunday, and then get back late Sunday into Monday morning. That's every other week. When do they go to class? The NCAA and these conferences are frankly stupid if they still consider these players student athletes. They can't do that. Yes, I know they're getting paid NIL and stuff, but to ask an 18 to 22-year-old, especially in the non-main sports where the actual education they get is vitally important to their future, that is straight up criminal. Something needs to change because this system is just horrendous, Austin.
For my final word, we're getting a little bit serious here. Cancer. It sucks. John Green taught us that it is one of the faults in our stars. On Valentine's Day morning, Stacy Ballou passed away from cancer. Her son Cade is an outfielder at Auburn. Local kid, went to high school 5 minutes from campus. On Friday, Cade and his dad Roger both told Auburn head coach Butch Thompson that Stacy would want Cade to play in the game that night. When Cade stepped up for his first at-bat, the record-breaking crowd at Plainsman Park had a moment of silence. A few innings later, Cade homered. Thompson said, quote, "I think it was the most inspiring thing we've ever seen." Cade's teammate, Eric Snow, said, quote, "That was literally the best thing I've ever seen in baseball." The color commentator on the home run said, quote, "Some things transcend the human experience and how sports can bring everyone together." Stacy and Roger Ballou were going to celebrate their 30th anniversary this August. Sometimes our fate is actually beyond our control. But on Friday night in Auburn, Alabama, Cade Ballou launching a home run was totally meant to happen.
Austin, that was. I mean, make people cry too. That was just. I mean, that's what sports is all about. It's about people and uniting as one for these teams and to play against. Yeah, it's just awesome.
It's a distraction sometimes from all the stuff that we got going on in our lives. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of bad in the world, but sometimes a home run, a moment like that, can give you some perspective as well. This was an awesome show, Jordan. We talked basketball, we talked lacrosse, we talked some baseball as well. That's some Jimmy V stuff all in a day. Jordan Leonard, Austin Barach, shout out to the producers. This was a blast here on No Pulp.